On a quiet night, in a glass office high above the world, two men sat across from each other. One was the richest man alive, Jeff Bezos, a builder of empires. The other was a man who once believed he could beat him. Sachin Bansal, India's original tech golden boy. The founder who built an e-commerce empire from a two-bedroom apartment, who challenged Amazon on its own turf, who dared to dream that India could have its own Jeff Bezos, and that it could be him. After 10 years of wars and miracles, he was here, sitting across from the very enemy he had sworn to defeat. This meeting was supposed to be his redemption, but behind Sachin's confident smile lived something darker. A man cornered by his own ambition, a king exiled from his kingdom, hiding desperation behind delusion. He wasn't here to conquer, he was here to beg. What happened in this room would seal his fate. Two titans entered. Only one would walk out unscathed, and the other would lose the empire he built, the legacy he craved, and the identity he could never live without. To understand how Sachin ended up here, pleading for salvation from the man he once tried to destroy, we have to go back to the beginning. Because this is the story of how a billionaire lost everything that actually mattered. There are places in history that manufacture greatness. Silicon Valley had Stanford, the birthplace of Google, Yahoo, Snapchat. India had IIT Delhi, the cradle that forged billion-dollar startups, and a young man who would one day build the empire called Flipkart, Sachin Bansal. Sachin wasn't born a genius. He wasn't the loudest or the smartest. He was ordinary. But in a place filled with prodigies, being ordinary feels like a crime. While others dreamed of topping exams, Sachin dreamed of being seen. He built his first computer program at IIT, a file-sharing app. A small invention that, like him, just wanted attention. But it was hijacked by the basest instincts of a male-dominated campus. Instead of academic exchange, it became a digital black market for porn. The university shut it down. To most, a harmless prank. To Sachin, personal failure. Humiliation reshaped his ambition. He buried himself in video games, losing himself in virtual worlds where he could finally win. Until reality caught up. He failed a year of university. But somewhere in those late-night gaming marathons, something shifted. The obsessive streak that made him lose control became the fire that would define him. He graduated and landed at the dream company for every Indian techie, Amazon. A cushy job, a steady paycheck. He was a perfectly mediocre coder, colleagues said, but one with an uncanny knack for understanding customers. By all accounts, Sachin had made it. But comfort wasn't validation, and ordinary wasn't destiny. He didn't just want to work at Amazon, he wanted to become India's Jeff Bezos. Every era has its titans. For the 21st century startup founder, they wore turtlenecks and built empires from code. To Sachin, Steve Jobs was a prophet, a messiah who proved that through technology, ordinary mortals could ascend to immortality. But destiny doesn't bloom in cubicles. Sachin was trapped at Amazon, the machine building a trillion-dollar empire by worshipping one principle: customer obsession. Sachin wanted this feeling for himself. Not money or success. He was chasing completeness. The feeling that he too could bend the world. So he made a choice. Armed with Amazon's stolen playbook, borrowed ideas, and conviction bordering on delusion, Sachin quit to build his own Amazon. That was the moment Flipkart was born. Not from innovation, from imitation, and desperate hunger to be seen as great. In July 1994, Amazon started by selling books online. Bezos never really wanted to sell books. The story goes that books were merely a Trojan horse, a low-risk prototype to test a far more ambitious idea: the everything store. The myth goes that Bezos deliberately chose books because they were uniform in size and shape, easy to model inventory logistics on. They provided massive data variety. Each book represented a unique SKU, perfect for stress testing Amazon's database architecture. Customers who buy books tend to be reliable and patient, ideal for a beta user base. In other words, books were never the business. They were the sandbox. Every revolution starts with betrayal. For Sachin, that betrayal was walking out of Amazon with their playbook tucked under his arm. If Bezos could conquer America with books, Sachin could conquer India's billion people the same way. He quit and started what everyone called a joke, an online bookstore. Even their IIT batchmates laughed. Sachin was mediocre, unimpressive, forgettable. No one thought he could lead anything. But Sachin didn't see a bookstore. He saw 1.2 billion people and a delivery network that didn't exist yet. Where others saw books, he saw India's everything store. Visionaries don't wait for permission. They steal fire from the gods. In October 2007, Flipkart started by selling books online. Flipkart was born in a 2-bedroom flat with borrowed laptops. The mission? Sell books online. The problem? They were building Amazon in a country that didn't behave like America. India was chaos. Credit cards were rare, logistics broken, and paying for something you hadn't received felt absurd. But Sachin didn't care. There was only one commandment that built Amazon into the behemoth it was: customer obsession. The real question was, how do you get people to find you?
Google.
Back then, Google's algorithm was crude, easy to manipulate. Sachin stuffed product pages with white-colored keywords. To users, Flipkart looked clean. To Google, it looked relevant. Flipkart began appearing at the top of searches for nearly every book in India, even ones it didn't sell. Traffic exploded. Sales jumped from dozens to hundreds daily. But visibility didn't pay bills. To scale, Sachin needed money. Every investor said the same thing: books, low margin, no future. To them, Flipkart was just a bookstore, not the prototype for the everything store. A competitor, Infobeam, appeared and offered to buy Flipkart outright. Sachin almost agreed, until he saw the contract. 5% of Infobeam and 15,000 rupees salary to head their books division. That moment broke something in him. The humiliation was complete. That moment clarified everything. Flipkart didn't need validation, it needed survival. He doubled down. While others built slides for investors, he built loyalty. Customers returned. Orders were delivered. Then, a man in New York noticed something. Lee Fixel was a rising prodigy at Tiger Global, one of the biggest venture capital firms in the world. He was paid to find what the world hadn't noticed yet. Lee was drilling into the Indian market the only way he knew how, by researching its culture, its trends, its best-selling books on business. Every book he searched for returned the same result: Flipkart. The company no one had heard of, a company that was not visible in any of the McKinsey reports, was owning India's internet. He tried contacting them. No reply. He called the office number. Disconnected. When Sachin realized who Lee was, he called back, but his phone couldn't make international calls. That's how raw and utterly unexpected this moment was. When they finally connected, Lee saw what no one else had: a company hacking its way to dominance, a founder who refused to lose. Lee invested $10 million, valuing Flipkart at $200 million, the largest early-stage investment in Indian startup history. The nobody from IIT who sold books had outplayed the system. But beneath the celebration, Sachin's obsession was evolving. He didn't want to just build a company. He wanted to build a kingdom. With Tiger Global's money, Sachin expanded. Kitchenware, clothing, phones. If it existed, Flipkart would sell it. But India hit a monster that had devoured every online store before Flipkart. India ran on cash. Only 10 million had credit cards, and most didn't trust online shopping. When things went wrong, word spread like a curse. The customer base shrank until companies suffocated. Now the monster had turned its gaze to Flipkart. Sachin was an ideas man, and ideas men hate being told it can't be done. So he created the solution no one else had dared to try: cash on delivery. It was elegant, radical. It answered India in India's language. Instantly, Flipkart's market exploded from 10 million to 1 billion. Orders 10x'd in weeks. But cash on delivery was expensive and chaotic. Delivery boys vanished with cash. Orders piled up. Money leaked everywhere. For the second time, Sachin's big idea was being strangled by operational reality. And again, Sachin chose risk over restraint. He used Flipkart's last cash to build their own delivery army. It was insane. It was brilliant. It worked. Sales quadrupled. Flipkart became a national force. Sachin had bent reality twice, and now he wanted the ultimate reward: immortality. He wanted Flipkart valued at $1 billion. General Atlantic, the venture capital firm that saw Facebook and Alibaba before the world did, agreed. Sachin was hours from the history books. Then it collapsed. General Atlantic pulled out. Bad bookkeeping, they said. Too messy, too risky. Flipkart had grown too fast. Sachin had ignored the boring parts: numbers, details, discipline. He'd run like a sprinter, but never learned to tie his shoes. Flipkart was now broke. At the last moment, Lee injected 50 million emergency funds. But rescue came with a price. Sachin's power was no longer absolute. Fixel appointed one of his own men, Kalyan, a quiet surgeon of numbers who believed in discipline, structure, metrics. Everything Sachin hated. The first crack in the kingdom, an outsider inside the castle. While Sachin dreamed, Kalyan executed. Investors loved him. Funding finally came, not at $1 billion, but at a $900 million valuation. Close enough for the world to cheer, far enough to sting Sachin's pride. The rise of Flipkart, this miracle, was no longer Sachin's alone, and he hated that. But he needed Kalyan, because another storm was about to hit Flipkart, because Amazon had officially entered the Indian market. A global titan with unlimited cash, flawless execution, and a thirst for dominance. To defeat them, Flipkart would need more than processes, more than operations. It needed ideas that bent reality itself, and Sachin was ready. Flipkart had remade India. 4G and cheap smartphones turned cities into marketplaces. And when there's a pie, giants arrive. Amazon came like a tide. Cash, scale, hunger that never slept. In retaliation, Sachin raised funds that made headlines. $200 million in July 2013, $160 million in October, finally pushing Flipkart past the $1 billion valuation mark. A unicorn. But being the public face of war meant someone else had to mind the battlefield. Kalyan did the dirty work Sachin wouldn't. While Sachin sold vision, Kalyan tightened the screws: margins, suppliers, working capital. He shifted culture from experimentation to execution. He answered to Lee Fixel alone, not the founder's ego. The battleground narrowed. Smartphones. By now, phones constituted 40 to 50% of all online shopping in India. Whoever owned smartphones would own Indian commerce. Sachin needed an edge. He needed exclusive access to an anticipated phone. But phone makers laughed. Online was for excess stock, not launch privilege. Sachin needed a partner who needed Flipkart as badly as Flipkart needed them. Motorola was struggling. They made a deal no one else would. Flipkart would shoulder marketing and logistics. Motorola would cut price 15%. Flipkart promised to sell 125,000 phones in 6 months. That's 700 phones daily for 180 days straight. If they couldn't, they'd pay for remaining stock. It was insane. It was audacious. Perfectly Sachin. The sale went live at midnight on February 12th. At 12:04 a.m., the site crashed. Engineers feared sabotage. Then the truth. Traffic was real. Extraordinary. By the end of day one, 100,000 phones were sold. The 125,000 target was met in 2 days, not months. It was proof that Flipkart's ideas could outplay Amazon's cash. The successful launch helped Flipkart achieve $1 billion in gross sales, a target set just 3 years earlier when revenue was only $10 million. It was a triumph so loud it drowned out the doubt. Flipkart could still bend reality. But every victory leaves its own wound. Sachin needed control. Kalyan had power. When Kalyan's operations turned Flipkart into a machine investors trusted, the credit shifted. To Sachin, that trust felt like theft. Sachin announced a festival sale, the Big Billion Day. Target, $50 million in sales. Flipkart's daily sales at that time was $2.5 million. If the impossible goal was met, Sachin would claim glory. If it collapsed, as he expected, Kalyan would take the fall, clearing the path for Sachin to reclaim absolute control. The sale wasn't a strategy. It was a calculated sacrifice to eliminate the one man standing between him and his throne. The sale went live on India's biggest holiday. Traffic crashed the site immediately, but the engineers bought it back within seconds. By 10 a.m., half of the target was met. In 10 hours, they'd hit $50 million in sales. Outside, Flipkart looked like it threw India's biggest party. But inside the war room, it felt like a funeral. 3 screens glowed: sales, traffic, and live tweets. The third was a bloodbath. Customers were furious. Fewer than 10% could place orders. The perfect paradox. Headline-winning sales at the cost of damaged reputation. Sachin seized the moment. He framed the disaster as proof that tech had been sidelined by operations. He painted Kalyan as risk-averse and pedestrian. Kalyan left Flipkart and returned to Tiger Global. The Big Billion Day chaos nearly broke Flipkart, but headlines painted it as triumph. Sachin used that perception to push for new funding. The mother of all funding rounds. A meeting was called. "We've raised a new round," Sachin said. "How much?" a senior executive asked, breathless. Sachin didn't answer. He just lifted a single finger. Flipkart had raised $1 billion, a number so absurd it broke reality. Overnight, Flipkart's valuation shot to $7 billion. Sachin had dragged his vision into reality by sheer force of ego. Bezos fired back with $2 billion for Amazon India. The final war had begun. Sachin now had $1 billion and absolute control, sitting at the helm of an empire charging into battle. He had won. He had been seen. But victory carried a corrosive price. The kingdom built on audacity had been stabilized by someone else's discipline, and Sachin had driven that discipline out. They say absolute power corrupts absolutely, but perhaps power does something simpler and crueler. Power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. And in Sachin, it revealed something fragile. A boy who built an empire not to change India, but to prove he was worth remembering. Sachin saw himself as a visionary. He'd outmaneuvered Google, won customers, twisted Motorola's supply chain. So why stop? Why not reshape retail's entire future? Flipkart started as a simple bookstore. It made millions when the target was just thousands. Then came Flipkart 2.0, the billion-dollar everything store. Now Sachin was rolling out Flipkart 3.0, and the target was insane: $100 billion in revenue. An Indian giant that would make Flipkart the biggest company in India. The evolution was seismic. Flipkart would stop being an everything store and become the platform that powered the stores. That platform would open to millions of sellers. And once that bazaar had India's shoppers inside, Flipkart would stretch outward. Payments, deliveries, services, utilities, travel. Step by step, the vision escalated. Store, platform, marketplace, ecosystem. Flipkart 3.0 aimed to make the company not just where India shopped, but where India lived. At the heart, one radical move: app only. The desktop website would go dark. Every user forced into Flipkart's app, creating total dependency. Lee Fixel thought it was reckless. Millions still shopped on the website. Abandoning that would hand Amazon a highway to market dominance. Lee signed off anyway. A big vision has a gravitational pull, and investors are always hungry for the next big payday. Sachin compressed what should have been a multi-year rollout into months. He moved like a king. No debate, no dissent. Anyone who questioned found themselves frozen out. The company replaced skeptics with yes men. Experience traded for blind faith. People who actually knew how to run operations were pushed aside. Flipkart's search was worse than Amazon's. Core categories that made money were neglected. Amazon quietly swooped in, buying warehouses, hiring logistics teams, pricing aggressively to steal market share. Big Billion Day 2015 became an app-only affair. Sachin's chance to prove Flipkart 3.0 was genius. They staged it like a tech festival, chasing headlines instead of hard numbers. They talked like a Silicon Valley platform, but their survival still depended on one thing: sales. The sales targets were missed, a first in Flipkart's history. Instead of treating it like a fire alarm, Flipkart threw a full-blown party. Celebrities, confetti, applause for no tech glitches. A victory parade for a loss. Behind the noise, a major phone brand walked out. Customer loyalty dipped. Satisfaction scores collapsed. Flipkart was so busy dreaming about tomorrow's glory that it ignored today's failures. And that blindness carved the first real crack into the empire. Kalyan kept his ear to the ground. Loyalists kept him updated. He heard about the junior managers panicking, warehouses in chaos, product teams lost. Amazon wasn't just growing, it was exploding. For 3 straight months, Amazon's sales matched what Flipkart had done in an entire previous year. The gap between Amazon and Flipkart was less than $100 million in gross sales. Valuations began to slide. Lee Fixel's reputation was on the line. He watched the monthly numbers get uglier and heard the same complaint bubbling up from every level. Sachin is living in a fantasy world. Lee realized Sachin had hit his ceiling. Founders capable of scaling from garage to global conglomerate are statistical errors. The Bezoses, the Zuckerbergs. Sachin wasn't part of that club. He wasn't a wartime general. He was just a founder who had stayed at the party too long. Lee demanded a professional turnaround specialist, Kalyan. Founders are legends until they start losing money. Once growth stalls, legend becomes liability. Under pressure, Sachin had to give in. His first big failure came as a formal board decision: step down as CEO. He accepted the title of executive chairman, a fancy name with no real power. June 2016. Kalyan returns with a vague title, Head of Category Design Management. He walks in and announces, "I'm the one making decisions now." He fires Sachin's leaders and brings back trusted operators. He rebuilds from the ground up. Focus on depth, not breadth. Stock what customers actually want to buy, not what looks good in a pitch deck. The strategy works. Kalyan's obsession with deep inventory in key categories wins back the smartphone market. Sales recovered. Investors pay attention again. Sachin didn't lose Flipkart to Amazon. He didn't lose it to Kalyan. He lost it to the story in his own head. He was fueled by impulse, not insight. He wanted to be remembered as a legend, not just a leader. Then came Big Billion Day 2016, Kalyan's audition for the throne. He delivered a masterclass, 15.5 million units sold. Not cheap trinkets, but high-value inventory. Kalyan proved he could beat Amazon with real numbers. Sachin had only proven he could burn cash. On January 9, 2017, the axe fell. The board appointed Kalyan as CEO without even asking Sachin. The irony was brutal. Sachin wanted to be the hero, but he had written himself out of the script. Kalyan purges, restructures, rebuilds. He puts his people in the critical positions. Within months, Flipkart transforms into Kalyan's company. Revenue stabilizes. Discipline returns. The company survives Amazon's assault, saved by the very operator Sachin had pushed aside. Sachin becomes a ghost in the building he created. The company he founded is breathing again, without him at the helm. He'd built the company as a testament to his ambition, and when reality caught up, the company survived. The man didn't. 10 years since one man in a two-bedroom flat lit a spark that reshaped India's digital destiny. 8 years since the mysterious Lee Fixel had flown over from New York and bet big on an unheard-of website selling books. After all the chaos and wars, Flipkart was finally thriving, ironically, without Sachin. Sales were up $2 billion. Losses were also up $1 billion. The dream of an IPO was fading. Amazon was hot on Flipkart's tail. The gap between the two giants was razor thin. Flipkart was still the market leader, but only in the way a wounded animal is still alive. Amazon had enemies, big ones. And the biggest enemy of all? With deeper pockets than God and a vendetta far older than Flipkart, was Walmart. Walmart wanted a champion to take on Amazon globally. They wanted a fortress in India. They wanted Flipkart. Not a slice, all of it. A full takeover that would leave Sachin, Kalyan, and even Lee with zero control. Sachin was already beaten, stripped of power, status, relevance. He had lost principles long ago, but maybe he could still claw back control. That's when the darkness took hold. He had spent years declaring war on Amazon, built Flipkart as the anti-Amazon. But now, staring down irrelevance, Sachin remembered, "The enemy of my enemy is my escape hatch." Sachin requested a secret meeting with the one man he had vowed to destroy, Jeff Bezos. Two titans finally face to face, but not as equals. Sachin told Bezos everything: Walmart's plans, Walmart's timing, Walmart's strategy. Then he whispered the unthinkable: buy Flipkart. On one condition: Sachin would retain his stake and return to power. To Bezos, ruthless, calculating, it was delicious. He could buy his biggest rival and slap Walmart in the face. He entertained it. For a moment, Sachin saw his comeback reflected in Bezos' eyes. But hubris destroys empires. Sachin forgot that he had approached Bezos, forgot that he had nothing left, forgot that Amazon was doing him a favor. He began demanding terms, demanding independence, demanding control, demanding that Amazon India be subordinate to him. A founder with no power, negotiating as if he still held a sword. The room laughed him out, literally. Bezos' team shut the door. The last hope evaporated. Flipkart would now belong to Walmart. The investors were overjoyed. Walmart was offering $16 billion for a 77% stake, the largest acquisition in Indian startup history. Lee would walk away with one of the biggest paydays the venture capital world had ever seen. Flipkart would live. But the founder? He was cornered. And a cornered ego is the most dangerous kind. May 10th, 2018. The deal signing was at 1 p.m. At 10 a.m., Sachin walked into the Walmart negotiation room alone, without telling anyone. And he detonated a bomb. He attempted to rewrite the agreement, demanded the right to appoint Flipkart's CEO, demanded special voting privileges for minority shareholders, meaning himself. He wanted veto power over Walmart's majority. It was insanity. Why would a company pay $16 billion and not control what they bought? Walmart froze. The deal was in jeopardy. When Flipkart leadership arrived, Walmart gave an ultimatum. Get your house in order or the deal dies. Lee Fixel could see his billion-dollar exit collapsing. Sachin had gone too far. He wasn't bargaining. He was sabotaging. If Sachin couldn't have Flipkart, then nobody would. The board walked into a closed room. No speeches, no hesitation, no mercy. They unanimously voted to fire Sachin Bansal from Flipkart, effective immediately. Sachin never saw it coming. His identity was so intertwined with Flipkart that he couldn't imagine the company existing without him. But the truth, the painful, humiliating truth, was that Flipkart only flourished when he stepped aside. The deal closed that same day. Lee Fixel made the announcement. Walmart owned Flipkart, and the man who built it wasn't even in the building anymore. Sachin still owned a massive stake. He was the founder, after all. He became a billionaire overnight. But power, respect, legacy, the things he worshipped, were ripped away. On May 10, 2018, Sachin Bansal became the richest ghost in Indian startup history. A man who built an empire, lost the throne, and died to the one enemy he never learned to fight: himself.